Jay Runer here, and today we're in a Ford Capri RS3100. So before we get into the few races that I got into with this car, I did tune it for C-Class, which is not a bad car. It's pretty good, maybe a little on the balance side. I didn't really make it an all-handling tune or an all-speed tune. I made it right in between so I could have like a good medium because I'm not too familiar with C-Class, not sure what's good or bad, but this car did very well. But before we get started, when I was tuning this car, I was looking at the lateral G's, and 60 miles per hour, you got 1.08, and then at 120, you got 1.04. And generally, when you see that, you want to try to keep those numbers as close to each other as possible, because generally, when you see that, it means your car has lift in the rear. That means when you go into a corner, you're more than likely to slide out at higher speeds. So there's a few things you can do to correct that. It's normally because you put the front bumper on that it makes it unbalanced, but in this case, it doesn't. So when I tuned this car, I took all the areo out of the front of the car. Oh, I don't want to change that. Took all the areo out of the front of the car so it can have so it could be as close to being equal as possible. It normally helps the rear end since when you do get that the unevenness at 120 miles per hour, it means your rear is understeering, and so you can then tune from taking the air out of the front of the car, which gives oversteer to the front, and then you can tune your suspension to have under oversteer. Now, in the case of this car, it turns from the center, so it's not bad to drive. It's just a little interesting at times. It feels like you're about to lose control of the car, but you're not. You definitely do have grip all the way through the corner. So you increase the aero all the way to the back, so you can give it the most planted situation possible, and then you're pretty much steering from the center. So without a further ado, let's get to the races. So here in this first race, you definitely see the acceleration that this car has. Massive amounts of acceleration. Turning is not too bad, but it seems like from what I could tell, everyone was like in the fives. The 5 region is like where you want to be in C-Class, but like I said, I'm not too sure with the C-Class, and this car performs very well. I'd definitely put it in a high tier, but in this first race here, just a 1v1 on VIR, one of the particular setups that I'm not familiar with. I think they did this setup for the Trackhawk Challenge, which I did very well with when it was around. Accidentally forgot to turn off my my track lines and almost did not make it through that corner, and the Mini Cooper definitely overshot there also. Well, yes, the car performs well. A lot of acceleration, so you definitely got the straight line on anybody for the most part, depending on how long the straightaway is and how much power the other person has. But it seems like in the C-Class, it's not a power game. It's more about handling and acceleration. So I have at least one of the components I need to compete in the C-Class. But I only had one job to do, and I failed it. And then I botched it at the end. So it was definitely my race to win, but I lost it at the end. Our next race takes us to Catalunya, and yeah, I started on pole, and I was first the entire time. I guess the extreme acceleration of this car, which this track is generally an acceleration track anyways, with some handling components in it. Definitely their cars out-handled mine. They just did not have the acceleration to keep up with this car. So I imagine on the handling track, this car isn't going to do too well, but it's going to do fairly well because it does have the acceleration to make up for it. Now, time for the most interesting race I had. Now, this is a pretty full lobby, starting on pole from Catalunya, and there's a Clio upside down at the beginning. Have no idea what happened there, but it was definitely funny. But remember that Clio, because it's going to be a problem later on in this race. So coming up to the first corner, cutting pretty deep, but not overextending, because I know a lot of people like to overextend that first corner and go off onto the side. Definitely messed up this speed section right here, and cars behind me were definitely catching up to me. I was a little unstable going up the hill, and acceleration was pretty good, but I was definitely outpowered by the Mitsubishi that was behind me, because I could see him catching me by the footage. But since we got the bus stop right here, definitely gives me a chance to slow down and take off from the corner. Now this car handles very well. Like I said earlier, it does turn from the center, so that's something you would probably have to get used to. Overall, it is planted. You can full throttle through most corners. I did do the gearing myself because I'm not leaderboard running right now, so I like to tune all aspects of the car. I think it has about 255 horsepower. I ended up staying with the stock motor. Or, no, I think I went with the VV. No, I think I went with the stock motor. I can't remember exactly, but I believe it was a stock motor, and I ended up doing the twin turbo setup. Yeah, that's what I did. And that ended up making like 322 foot-pounds of torque and a 2,100 pound car, so definitely the acceleration is on my side. And coming up to this speed section, the S here, is when the players behind me start catching me, because they went with a more handling style build, which their cars had good acceleration also. So they're definitely able to make up a lot of ground because they are able to go through the corners much faster and keep up with my acceleration at the same time. So that's why I put this car in the high tier, because it doesn't have the extreme handling like the other cars in this class does, but it does have one of the components that you do need to be up in the top. Just right there, see him catching up to me. That was that Clio from earlier that was flipped over from the beginning of the race. And as you can see there, he is definitely cutting wide and definitely extending the track. So I'm guessing that's how he caught up. Definitely extending the track. Don't really like that. Definitely closes off the inside line, but goes a little wide and bumps the wall. My car definitely outpowers his or out accelerates, but he definitely outturns me. If I remember correctly, his stats were like 5.3 or 5.2 in handling. Acceleration and everything else wasn't all that great. But it seems that the only thing that he needed in this race was the handling. So handling is definitely overpowered stat in a C class, but so is his acceleration, because at this point in time, in the straightaway, he can't catch me. He's definitely an aggressive driver, as you'll see here soon. He's definitely going to get in my business and definitely make me irritable. And when I get irritable, I tend to, want to serve out a little justice. Cuts in, then pushes me wide, and then goes extremely wide. I generally just let people race their own race. And this time I don't serve any justice, because he definitely backed off after he saw that I was not going to extend the track just because he was. But maybe he decided not to. I don't know. But it gave way to the person who was in third to catch up, which was an actual good driver. He drove amazingly. And I think that car, the 86 or the FRS Toyota, is the Subaru or the BRZ. There we go. It's definitely a awesome car in the C class. Now here we go, going into the S's, three deep. The Clio and the BRZ are sticking next to each other. The BRZ definitely has good acceleration and probably the same amount of power as my car does. So he's keeping up in the straightaway. and he definitely has a speed advantage over me. As we're coming into the bus stop, the Clio comes through and just smashes both of us. Unfortunately, I'm the only one who took an L into the wall, which it happens. BRZ was definitely trying to be a little impatient and pushing up over the curve. He definitely did not have that line, but the Clio definitely didn't have the line either. But for the most part, the race was going to sham out pretty good. I probably would have ended up third or second, depending on what the Clio was going to do. But the guy in the BRZ was definitely a good driver. I messaged him, and he apologized to me, but I understood what happened. It wasn't his fault. It was the Clio's fault. So I was no hate towards him. It was definitely a good race nonetheless. So this has been Jay Runer. Like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.